this is Linda Lysakowski with our spiritual podcast, and I am really excited to introduce you to today's guest. I know you're going to get a lot of wisdom from him, but I first have to tell you the story about how we met each other. Nate Turner Williams is the co-founder and editor of the Black Catholic Messenger, and we were introduced by my good friend from Cynthia Brown from Philadelphia. So we're all over the place. I think when we first met and I learned about Nate, I believe we were both on the West Coast. I was in Las Vegas and I think you were in California. And now we're both in Missouri. So fate must have brought us together. I don't know. We haven't met each other yet, though, because we're at opposite ends of Missouri. He's in St. Louis, which is as far east as you can get, and I'm in Kansas City, which is as far west as you can get in Missouri. But Nate, I really thrilled that you could be with us today. And I wanted to talk about, because you're not only the founder and editor of Black Catholic Messenger, but he's also a seminarian. So I think it's a really interesting background that you have. And how did you pull together this intersection of your faith and your feelings about social justice and reporting as an editor? So how does that all come together?
Yeah, so I'm a convert to the faith, to the Catholic faith. I converted
so am I.
yeah, I'm fairly recent, 2019, December 2019.
Oh,
So I've been Catholic for about, what is that, 5.5 years now,
wow.
and 6.5 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So that conversion experience was a bit unusual, perhaps, compared to other Catholic conversions, because that was sort of what awakened the social justice impulse in me. Not that I didn't have one before. I was certainly raised in a home that prioritized those sort of issues. But I think as an adult, I kind of let those things fall by the wayside. But for whatever reason, when I was learning more about the Catholic faith, and especially as I learned more about Black Catholics, I was just very inspired to work for justice and to see how integral the work of social justice is in American Catholicism, the history of American Catholicism, especially among African Americans. So as I learned more about that, and then after I officially converted, I kind of just had this urge to be on the lookout for different needs within the church. Like, what could I contribute to the Catholic Church as this new convert? And of course, shortly after I converted, there was the global pandemic and also the George Floyd movement. So the entire country was thinking about social justice issues, especially the issue of anti-Black racism. And as a new convert to the faith, the way that was coming to the fore for me was through my reading of Catholic media. And I was seeing the fact that there were not many Black writers in US Catholic media, and certainly not many Black stories being told in American Catholic media. So that kind of inspired me to start asking questions. And the more I asked, the more I learned what the need was. And I also learned about the history of Black Catholics in American media, and Daniel Rudd, who founded the first Black Catholic newspaper more than 125 years ago. But it seemed like in the time since the early 20th century, there had not really been a Black Catholic newspaper telling our stories from our perspectives as Black Catholics. And so that's where we came up with the idea for Black Catholic Messenger. And it was also an outlet for me to really do that work for justice that I was inspired to do with the skills that God had given me. And so it all just came together after I became Catholic.
Wow. And I'm really surprised to hear. I didn't realize you were such a recent convert. That kind of, I'm really surprised because you are pursuing the priesthood. And I think, doing that and editing the Black Catholic Messenger must keep you really, really busy. How do you see those two things complementing each other? And what, I guess, even before we get into that, maybe what led you to the priesthood, being such a recent convert? That's just an amazing story.
So I was a seminarian actually before I became Catholic. When I was
Oh,
still Protestant, I attended a Baptist seminary for one semester. And before that, I had generally had the idea that I wanted to go into ministry. And obviously, that looks different for a Protestant. At the time, I was Southern Baptist. So the way that's expressed for them is different than it is in the Catholic Church. But when I converted, I didn't feel like I had lost my calling, so to speak, the feeling that God wanted me to be in ministry in some way. So it was just a matter of figuring out what the differences were. What does it mean to have a vocation in the Catholic Church? And the more I learned about it, the more I felt like, yeah, I think that I might be a good candidate for that. And so I discerned that for a while as I was converting, and after I converted, the process really started before I was even confirmed. And I first entered seminary with the Josephites in 2021, and now I'm in seminary with the Congregation of the Mission, also known as the Vincentians. Um, so yeah, it was really an extension of my conversion, knowing that I was in the church God wanted me to be in, and also feeling that I still had a call to ministry, and now more specifically to the priesthood. I think that that also intersects with the passion for social justice. There's a long history of American Catholic priests working for justice, though many people don't necessarily know about that. So the more I learned about the history, I felt like, well, yeah, of course these things go together.
That's really fascinating. Um, as a editor and a co-founder, I know that you're not just writing your own stories, but really, I think you help shape the work of others. In fact, um, I guess another connection that we had came through when I moved to Missouri. I was shocked to find out that Father Augustus Tolton was born in Missouri, and I did not even realize that Missouri was a slaveholding state. I guess I had a sheltered life growing up or something, but I always thought of slavery being in the deep South and never really thought of it as being in Missouri. And I did write a story for the Black Catholic Messenger, which Nate very graciously edited for me, put in some great links. But and now you're so close to that his birthplace. Have you been there yet?
I have not visited. It's on my
Oh,
list.
well, let me know when you're going. Maybe it was a long trip for us. We spent a long day from 7:30 in the morning till 11:30 in the evening, but
Mm.
we covered a lot of territory, and it was really rewarding. But I think that social justice issue is something that also appeals to me. But how do you balance, the need for objective reporting with the experiences that you've had with the Black Catholic community?
Well, given that there was no Black Catholic daily or regular newspaper for probably a century before we started Black Catholic Messenger, there was a need for all kind of stories to be told. The daily news of what's going on in the Black Catholic community, um, especially the different accomplishments Black Catholics are having, or different ways Black Catholics are speaking up on the issues of the day. I mean, really, it touches all sectors of American society. It was important to tell those stories, but then also to give a voice to Black Catholics in other ways, to tell their perspectives about all kinds of issues, even things that don't necessarily have anything to do with the Catholic Church, but coming from a Black Catholic perspective. I found that to be essential as well. And so both of those are really the two main prongs of what Black Catholic Messenger publishes, is news articles and opinion articles. And yeah, I think that is essential to any publication, those two elements. And for us, it flows naturally that we need to have our stories being told, but then we also need to have our voice to tell all kinds of other stories as well. So that's why BCM does what it does.
I think it's really, really great that you're doing this. And I have to put a plug in here for, I'm sure you've written many stories about the woman whose picture is behind you, and somebody I admire greatly, Sister Thea Bowman. But for those of people in our viewers that may not be familiar with Thea Bowman, can you tell us a little bit about her? I'm sure you've done many stories on her, and I'm fascinated by her story. So, can you tell our viewers a little bit about her?
Sure, yes. Thea Bowman, born, I believe, Bertha Bowman, is one of the 7 African Americans on the pathhood to sainthood, on the path to sainthood in the Catholic Church. She was born in Mississippi in 1937, and she was actually born a Protestant to Methodist parents, I believe, and she converted to the Catholic faith as a child after attending, or while attending, schools run by the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration.
Oh,
And also at a young age, she felt a call to religious life. So not only was she drawn to the Catholic faith, but was also drawn to her eventual vocation. And she went back and forth with her parents about it, and they eventually allowed her to go. I believe she was 15 when she first entered the FSPA Sisters in Wisconsin, I think. And yeah, La Crosse, Wisconsin. So she traveled all the way from Mississippi to the northern Midwest to join the sisters, and she spent the next, what, 65? No, she died in her 50s. She spent the next 35 years or so in religious life. She became a very integral part of the Black Catholic movement, which was after the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, the late 1960s, when African American Catholics became very motivated to integrate Black spirituality with their Catholic faith, both in the liturgy and in their personal spirituality and in their public witness. And Sister Thea became an important part of that movement, both as a liturgist, as a scholar. She had a doctorate from the Catholic University of America, and also as a traveling speaker and singer. She did all kinds of things to promote Black Catholicism, but more generally, Black pride and anti-racism. She became a national figure known for those things. And she unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer in her 40s, I think, and she died of cancer in 1990, I believe, shortly after giving a monumental message to the U.S. bishops in her final months. She spoke before them. You can find it online. She gave an address to them, very powerful reflection on her upbringing, her conversion, the problem of racism in America. And yeah, she's to remember today as just a monumental fighter for justice and an exemplary Black Catholic. So her sainthood cause was opened in the Diocese of Jackson in Mississippi in 2019, I believe. So she is now venerated as Servant of God, Thea Bowman, and hopefully will soon be Venerable Thea Bowman, because the materials researching her life were just sent to the Vatican a few months ago. So we're hoping that her canonization cause will move forward quickly. But yeah, that's a short overview of why she's so amazing.
Uh, when you mentioned her address to the bishops, I highly recommend everybody to go just search on YouTube. And if you put Thea Bowman's name in and Conference of Bishops, you'll be able to see her address, which was so moving and so powerful. Nate and I were talking a little bit before we went live here, and I said, I think she's already performed a miracle, because I forget what year that was, in the 1980s, or was it sooner?
89, I believe.
89 that she made that address, and she had every bishop that was present standing up, holding hands and singing "We Shall Overcome." And I said that to me was a miracle right there, that she got those bishops wrapped around her little finger, I think, because she was such a powerful. And you mentioned her singing, her, which is beautiful. She starts out her address to them, at least the video that I saw, she started out by singing "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child." And I thought, wow, it was so powerful. So I highly recommend everybody look at that. But just talking about the hierarchy of the church, which the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops certainly represents, it must be kind of a challenge to, in your reporting, to make sure that you have a balance between how do you hold those powerful institutions like the Catholic Church accountable, but still operating from a place of faith and community building. That must be a challenge for you as an editor.
Yeah, I think you can't have the authentic faith and authentic Catholic community without authentic fidelity to what the church is supposed to stand for. And of course, the church is not just the hierarchy, it's not just the people at the top, it's everyone, it's the entire Catholic faithful, all the baptized. So it is our role, I would say, to hold our leaders accountable, especially when they go astray. And unfortunately, in the United States, Catholic leaders have not always been on the right side of history when it comes to issues like racism. So, as a Black Catholic, I think even today, it's so important that we continue to speak up on these issues so that the Catholic Church actually is. Representing what the Catholic Church teaches about racism, about justice, about solidarity, about standing with the oppressed, about the preferential option for the poor, which sometimes our leaders do not emphasize or actively obfuscate. So I think it's essential to Catholic witness and to Catholic faith to remember these things and to promote these things, especially here in the United States. So through my work with Black Catholic Messenger and also in the larger Black Catholic community, these themes are essential to our faith and to our spirituality. I think there was research done by Pew recently that showed that Black Catholics were the most likely Catholic demographic group in the United States to value those things as essential to their faith. And I've seen that, I've lived that, and I would say that's why we see it as part and parcel to our faith to represent these issues and to hold leadership accountable when they do not represent those values as they should.
That's really courageous and certainly needed, I think, in this world. And it's really great, I think, to see so many bishops, archbishops, and even the Pope speaking up for social justice issues. Do you have any thoughts about Pope Leo and how he intersects with your work?
I have many thoughts about Pope Leo XIV. Black Catholic Messenger was one of the first publications to write about his ancestry.
Oh.
So I won't go so far as to call him a Black Pope, but I will say that he is close enough that it should be talked about and not dismissed as, something that doesn't matter. It very much does matter. And I think the fact that he had to learn about it himself from the media as opposed to learning about it from his own family. I mean, his grandmother was a mixed race Black Creole woman from Louisiana.
Right.
And apparently Pope Leo and his brothers didn't know that until
Oh,
after he was
really? I
elected.
didn't realize that he did not know that. Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
they knew she was from Louisiana, but apparently they knew nothing of her ancestry. So they say until after he was elected Pope, which is an incredible thing to consider. And it tells us a lot about what it means to be a Black person in America, to have Black ancestry in America, and why a person would feel they shouldn't pass that knowledge on to their children. I mean, there's so many layers to that,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Pope Leo represents the diversity of the American experience and the complications of American history surrounding race, Blackness, slavery, and other issues. But beyond that, beyond the Pope's ancestry, I think he represents continuity with his predecessor, Pope Francis, someone who revolutionized the Catholic Church as an institution that can speak to modern issues with an emphasis on solidarity, on justice, on the poor. And Pope Leo so far has been carrying that legacy forward quite beautifully. And doing so as this unexpected American Pope, I think is really important. So I love to write about Pope Leo. I love to listen to what he has to say, especially with the turmoil that we're living in America and across the world with so much discord, that the Pope remains a consistent voice on these issues, speaking up for what the Catholic Church teaches about peace and about solidarity and about the need for human fraternity.
Right. I was a huge fan of Pope Francis, and I thought, oh, how are they ever going to replace Pope Francis? And I thought, well, maybe the new Pope will be Francis II. And when he chose the name Leo, I was quite inspired because I'm sure he was basing that on Leo the 13th, who was known as the father of social justice in the Catholic Church. So I think that is another plus for him in my book. And I think he's done an outstanding job of being very brave, very bold, and very courageous, but still maintaining all of his faith and leadership of the church. So you must be very happy about his his leaning toward social justice, I think, right?
Absolutely. I'm excited to see what he will bring to what he will continue to bring to the church to keep it I don't want to say relevant, but to keep it on the minds of people, not just Catholic people in the world who need to hear solid faith leadership in our times.
Right. Absolutely. One of the things that I know your work involves a lot of historical preservation and obviously the causes for Black sainthood, which you've mentioned already, but um, can you tell us some more about the history that you found? Like, I'm particularly also interested in Father Augustus Tolton, and I think he's just an amazing story. But maybe you have some other stories that you'd like to share with us from your work on digging up past history.
Well, one story I love to write about, one place I love to write about is St. Augustine, Florida, which is the oldest city in the United States,
Mhm.
although most people don't know that. I've had the opportunity to go there a few times since Black Catholic Messenger came into existence, and learning about that history, it was all brand new to me when I was in the process of converting to the Catholic faith. There's a wonderful book called The History of Black Catholics in the United States by Father Cyprian Davis, which talks about that history, which began in Florida in 1565, I believe. And the first Catholics to step foot on what would become the United States was an interracial group of Spaniards. It included both free and enslaved Black Catholics. So when you talk about the Black Catholic story and what would become the United States, you can't forget about St. Augustine, Florida, which then was called Mission Nombre de Dios,
Oh,
Mission Name of God in Spanish. And so just learning about histories like that, being able to write about stories like that, I love it because it was so brand new to me, but it was like right under my nose. It's not like
right.
this is some hidden city that nobody can go to. It just is not the place we're told about when we're told about where America began. And really, it didn't even begin there. It was earlier than that in Puerto Rico, where Black Catholics first arrived and Catholics first arrived to what would become the United States. And of course, that story is tied up in the history of colonialism and the ravages of that. I've gotten to write about the celebration of the abolishment of slavery in Puerto Rico, at which point I believe the Archbishop erected a statue of St. Josephine Bakhita
Mm.
in the Cathedral of San Juan to honor that anniversary of the end of slavery on that island. So stories like that I really love. I also like to write stories about the some of our historic Black Catholic parishes. Um, I just wrote one about actually one in Puerto Rico, and I've written some about well, really some all over the place. But we have parishes, Black parishes that are hundreds of years old, that date back so far, and yet we don't necessarily think about them when we talk about the oldest Black churches in the United States. Um, but these are places that should be remembered, that should be known by the average American, and especially by the average American Catholic and Black Catholics. So I love writing about those sorts of things.
I'll bet. And I've been to St. Augustine also, but never realized there was a racial connection. I guess I just thought it was founded by Spaniards, and I just assumed they were all white Spaniards. But so
Oh
you
man.
just taught me something here.
Yeah, another cool thing about Florida was that the Spanish king put out a decree to say that anyone who escaped from the British colonies, the early America that we know, that we're told about in school, anyone who escaped from slavery there and made it to Florida would be declared free as long as they converted to the Catholic faith and enlisted in the military. Presumably, that second part was for men, but that's part of early American history as
Oh,
well. And some of the revolts that we've learned about in the
yeah.
British colonies are now believed to have been fomented by Black Catholics, enslaved Black Catholics who were envisioning an escape to Florida, to St. Augustine, to
Wow.
that colony there. So yeah, it's an interesting history, and we shouldn't just think about the British when we talk about colonial American history.
Right. That's interesting. That's very intriguing. I guess as an author myself, I have to ask you this question with all your knowledge that you have and all the writing you've done in articles. When is your first book coming out?
Oh my goodness. There are no concrete plans for a book at this time, although there have been some ideas floated to me. Um, it seems like a very daunting task to sit down and write a book, but it might just happen with some help from God and from other friends.
Well, I'm willing to help you with editing because I do that. So I can't wait to read a book by you because I think it would be monumental.
Well, thank you. I'm
Yeah,
flattered.
a lot of great knowledge. But why do you think it's so vital that we do write about these things and reach back into the history and tell these stories today?
If we don't tell these stories, these forgotten stories, we don't have the full picture. We can't speak of, for example, American Catholicism if we're not telling the story of Black Catholics dating back, 500 years here in what will become the United States. And I think that's part of why Black Catholic Messenger and the voices of Black Catholics more generally are so essential, because you don't have the full American voice unless you're hearing everybody. And for most of American Catholic history, we've been hearing from the dominant group. And even when the stories of other groups are told, it's usually by the dominant group. So that's why I like to think of Black Catholic Messenger as a publication about Black Catholics and by Black Catholics. It matters who's telling the story as well. So, yeah, if you really want the full story, you have to dig into the difficult histories, the histories that have been forgotten, the histories that have been suppressed, the histories that make people still uncomfortable today. Those are the stories that definitely have to be told. So that's part of the mission of Black Catholic Messenger, and also the mission of so many Black Catholic and other scholars from marginalized groups, historians from marginalized groups, who want to make sure that these important but hidden stories are told.
You want to tell us a little about Augustus Tolton or any of the other Black Catholics that are up for sainthood? I know Tolton is one of my favorites, so that's why I led with him, but maybe there's some others that you'd like to share some stories about.
Yeah, Tolton and Sister Thea behind me are regarded as part of the Saintly Seven. When I became Catholic, it was more popularly called the Saintly Six, but I made a big
Right.
stink about it quite a bit because there were actually seven
Who
African
was
American
it that they
kings before
forgot?
sainthood.
I can't remember. I know they did forget one, but I forgot who it was.
Yeah, the year after Sister Thea's cause was open, there was another cause open for servant of God Martin Maria de Porres Ward, who
Mm.
was an African American born in Massachusetts, ordained for the conventual Franciscans, but who spent his entire ministry overseas in Brazil because of racism in the United States. Most bishops wouldn't accept Black men into their diocese, even if they were ordained.
Mm.
Um, and obviously that's an ugly history in itself, but that led to a tradition of some African American priests going overseas to work in missions. So servant of God Martin Maria did that, and he was beloved in Brazil. Took to that culture, to that language, and to their spiritual community, and ministered there faithfully as a teacher, professor, catechist, parish priest. And after he died, he was immediately venerated by the local faithful. So the diocese that I'm not going to be able to pronounce, so I'm not even going to try, they opened his cause, I believe, in the year 2020. So that's why I kept saying, no, it's Saintly Seven. So servant of God Martin Maria is one to be remembered. Another one, though, I don't know what we're going to call the group if it's eight, is Venerable Rafael Cordero, who, to return to Puerto Rico again,
Mm.
was a teacher believed to be regarded as the father of public education in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
And he was an Afro Puerto Rican descendant of enslaved people on that island. And he was a masterful educator, which is why he's often called the maestro. And he was known again for educating children of all races and backgrounds, which was revolutionary in his time. And his cause was opened, I'm not even sure when, but he's typically not regarded as one of the African American candidates for sainthood. A, because Black people in Puerto Rico aren't referred to as African American, but B, because he died before Puerto Rico was annexed by the United States.
okay.
But I don't care about that because it's part of the United States now,
Right.
even though it's not a state. And so I regard him as one of our holy eight.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, people should read about Venerable Rafael Cordero as well and learn more about him. And if you get the chance, go venerate him in Puerto Rico. So
I would
yeah,
love
he's another.
to. I I have I have 14 great grandchildren, and they're only four of them are Caucasian. The rest are a mixture. There's Puerto Rican, there's African American, there's Panamanian. I can't even
Wow,
remember them all. What Mexican? There's one Mexican in there.
that's
But
beautiful.
but they're all different. I would love to visit Puerto Rico though, and I know I would be have warm welcome there. So,
Absolutely.
and there were, I believe there were two men who became priests. I believe they were brothers that were not known that they were black, and they were educated in the United States, correct? Before
That's right.
Augustus Tolton.
Those are the Healy brothers, and I believe
Oh,
there were three of them that became
oh,
priests.
oh, really?
Yeah, Patrick, James, and Sherwood all became priests. Michael became the first black, I think, captain of a federal ship or
Oh,
something of that nature. One of the sisters, whose name is Eliza, became the first Mother Superior, Black Mother Superior from the United States.
hmm,
But that was in Canada. She moved to Canada. All of them were sent overseas to be educated.
hmm,
Um, the ones who became priests or religious, were either sent to Canada or Europe to be educated because they were born in Georgia. It was illegal
hmm.
to do what their father wanted them to do, was to get a good education as black people. But yeah, they were mixed race. Their father was Irish. Their mother was an enslaved person. And they passed for white during their ministries, meaning that despite the fact that they were black, mixed race black people, they felt it would be better for their ministries and work to not reveal that. Now, it's not to say that nobody knew. I think the people, like in the seminary, for example, who accepted them knew, but it was not talked about or promoted.
Hmm.
So it's kind of complicated how people regard them today. Some
Right.
are like, well, they didn't want to claim us, so we're not going to claim them. But for me, yeah, they are the first known, or the first one who got ordained was the first known African American Catholic priest, and James became the first bishop. I think he was the first bishop of Portland in Maine. So he
Oh,
was the first African American Catholic bishop. His brother Patrick was a Jesuit. He became the first first African American PhD, first African American college president, or of a major university. He became president of Georgetown. He's regarded as the
oh,
second founder
oh,
of
wow.
Georgetown. Yeah, so that family represented a lot of firsts, but they did all, for the most part, hide the fact that their mother was a black person.
Wow. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. But um, so I think that's probably why Augustus Tolton is typically referred to as the first openly black person to be ordained.
Exactly.
And I believe he studied in Rome because they wouldn't accept him in a seminary here, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He did. And the interesting thing is that I believe Tolton was being educated for the priesthood in Rome at the same time that some of the Healy brothers were being educated for the priesthood in another part of Europe. So I wonder
Oh, really?
sometimes, did they run into each other?
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to research in your
Yeah.
spare time, huh?
Well, somebody's spare time.
Well, now speaking of spare time, I don't know how you're finding time to do all this research and writing for the Black Catholic Messenger while you're in the seminary. So, for listeners, most of our listeners probably have no idea what a seminary life is like, but can you tell us what a typical day in the seminary is like, and what's your formation like? Tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So again, I'm currently in formation with the Congregation of the Mission, also known as the Vincentians, and we are in what is called the associate phase, which is a period where we're living with the community, but we are not yet novices. So during that phase, a day for us typically looks like getting up early in the morning for meditation And after that, we have prayer in common, so the Liturgy of the Hours. We pray morning prayer together as a community. Then we have community mass together during the week. And we also pray evening prayer together. And we also, as Vincentians, have a ministry to the poor. And we, as the associates, are living that out here in the St. Louis area at St. Vincent's Parish, where we participate in some of their outreach efforts. And that is kind of the basics of it. We also have formation classes a few times a week where we learn more about the history of the Vincentians, about St. Vincent, and some of the rudimentary things we should know about Catholic practice and the priesthood. So that all precedes novitiate, where we would officially become Vincentians and spend a year in intense prayer and continuing formation before we would then progress to the actual school aspect of seminary. So yeah, that's what our typical day looks like right now here in Missouri.
Few years ahead of you yet.
Indeed.
Well, I can't wait for your ordination. I can make the trek. I assume you're going to be ordained in St. Louis, right?
I could not possibly say, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think Vincentians are necessarily ordained here.
I just think, you're such a fascinating person with a history of just being Catholic since 2019. I just can't imagine that you're doing all you're doing and have the knowledge that you have already on your side. But is there anything that I missed? There's so much I want to ask you. I think maybe I'll have to have you back again after you get a little further in your progress and maybe tell us more about your life. But what have I forgotten maybe that you would like to share with people?
I think you've done a good job covering quite a lot of ground. But yeah, I feel like I've been Catholic forever now. I feel like I've been running BCM forever. But I guess if you focus on one thing long enough, you learn quite a bit about it. But there are so many other experts who know tons more than me. So I think it's just important that people, if they want to learn more about Black Catholics, they look that up. And maybe everybody should start with that book I mentioned from Father Cyprian Davis, History of Black Catholics in the United States. That's a good place for everybody to start.
I'm sure you're familiar with Father Brian Massengale also. I've read his book and it's wonderful. I'm sure he has a few out, and I forgot what the one that I read is even titled, but it was made a great impression on me now.
Yeah, Father Brian's book is called Racial Justice and the Catholic Church. That's another great book for people to read. Yeah.
That was an amazing book, to say that, how we've come so far and yet we have not come far at all. So I think it really had a big impression on me. Well, I want to thank you for your time, and I think this has been really fantastic. And if anybody has questions, we'll give them the link to get to the Black Catholic Messenger so they can read, because the articles that you publish are really fantastic. So I will give everybody is there any other links that you would like to share with us? Link about the Vincentians, maybe?
Yeah, let me see. People can learn more about the Vincentians Western Province at vincentian.org.
Oh, okay. And is that St. Vincent de Paul or not?
Oh, yes. We are founded by St. Vincent de Paul 400 some odd years ago.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness. I thought when you said your focus is on the poor, it might have been that Vincent, but I just wanted to make sure.
That's the guy. We get it all from him.
All right. Well, thanks again for everything. I think you've been a fantastic host, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.